I've booked my EQ5 Pro in with dark frame, so I need to take all of this apart. The issue which I have with this at the moment is that the declination is really stiff and it feels rough. So as I'm turning it, it gets really stiff and quite rough as it rotates. And I was actually finding that the declination motor would jam and stall the stepper motor, which obviously won't do it any good. So what I'm going to do is take all of this apart, and Dark Frame have been very good. They've sent me a box and full detailed instructions of what to do and loads of packing material. So I'm going to pack this up exactly to how they've said and send it away to Dark Frame. According to the instructions here, it says let them know if you have any non-standard parts fitted. So I've got here an ADM saddle, so that I need to tell them about. And it says please ensure that you remove the polar scope and caps. Okay, so cap and cap. Bit of a clean before I send it, I think. Polar scope and caps removed. It says here to include the motor control box, the cables for the motor control box, the hand controller, my hand controller, and apparently they will update the firmware on this and that as well. So it should be on the latest. And then it goes into great detail about all of the different bubble wrap that they have supplied. So I'm going to go through now and wrap everything up to make sure that it's completely safe. But it's fair to say it's a pretty tight fit. I've got everything in, which is good. So now I just need to put the last layer and then seal it up and let them know that it's ready to be collected. From sending the mount to Dark Frame and to getting it back was about 5 months. And at various points I called Dave over at Dark Frame and he was really good. He told me exactly what was going on. The right ascension was relatively straightforward to fix and he did a great job. That was done. The declination, as I knew and had said, was sticking, and as a result he had to dismantle the mount, and there was also some plastic rings inside which were slightly damaged, which would kind of go along with the declination jamming, so I assumed that that's what was causing that issue. The history of this mount was that it was second-hand to me, and many parts of it were broken, so I replaced those. Skywatch are quite good with getting spare parts. And once I replaced those, it still has never guided particularly well, and it really did need a good service. Although it took the better part of 5 months to get it fixed, at various times when I phoned Dark Frame, they were really good and they kept me informed with what was going on. And although the mount failed their tests repeatedly, eventually they got to the point where it was passing the tests. My criteria for this repair was to get the mount functioning. It was not about chasing amazing guiding figures, so I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to suddenly have sub-arc second amazing guiding from what is essentially an EQ5 Pro budget mount. It is a budget mount. If I was chasing guiding figures, I would get an HEQ5 or use my EQ6. So essentially the EQ5 Pro is an entry-level mount, and it can do astrophotography if it's in good condition and well set up, but it's not a mount of choice when it comes to guiding. What I was really after was consistency and functionality. So I wanted to be able to leave the mount and know that it will guide consistently, and I wanted to be able to come down in the morning and find that the mount was still working and hadn't jammed, which is where I was at that point. Essentially it would guide until it jammed and then it would just stop. Let's have a look then at how well the mount works and whether or not it functions okay. This is PixInsight. I want to show you the blinked frames. Now prior to this, I would have quite a lot of frames that would be thrown away due to the mount's inconsistency. So that would be poor guiding, that would be not doing the meridian flip, or it would be stopping. Of the 280 frames, 12 of those, these 12, were bad. These were bad frames. So I'm going to show you these. So let's now blink through the ones which I eliminated. I've got a 1 second delay between these. So that's an aircraft, that's an aircraft, that's an aircraft, that's a satellite, that's a satellite, that's a satellite, that's a satellite as well, they're satellites. So all of these have faults. They've got either satellites or aircraft going through them. So I wouldn't normally stack those because there's no point. Now, from the data that we can see here, I'm going to now show you a comparison with the good data which I kept after blinking. This is the good data which I'm now going to blink through. I will change the settings here so it goes a little bit faster. This is really consistent. It is moving every 3 frames due to dithering. So it's important to remember that it will move around slightly for dithering. But of the 280 frames, only 12 I didn't want to stack. That's very good for this particular mount, and I'm not unhappy about that. It's also important to remember the conditions were actually very good. We were very lucky it was not windy, and the seeing was clearly reasonably good as well. This is a screen grab from Nina, and I wanted to show particularly this graph which you can see here. You can see that as astronomical darkness appeared, the number of stars which were visible increased, and then as astronomical darkness ended, the number of stars decreased. So that's why we have that lovely sort of curve there. The focus curve was excellent. That's a really good focus curve. And if you look at the guiding down here, it's saying 0.67. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Either side of that, you can see where the graph has deviated due to dithering, and it's indicated by this little black triangle to say I've started dithering. And you can see that the declination, which is the red line, has moved, and it's actually quite a long period of time. So you can see that the mount settling and returning back to good guiding is not great. But that's okay, because the rest of the data, once it had settled, was quite good. I also took a snip of the PhD2 data as well. And you can see that when it's dithering, you can see there, it goes slightly crazy and takes a while to settle. Likewise here, it takes a while to settle, and here it takes a while to settle. So dithering recovery is not amazing, but the actual guiding itself is pretty consistent. So when it just guides, it's not too bad, not too bad at all. When it dithers, it pushes the mount around and then it takes a while to settle. I'm happy that the performance of the mount has improved. As I say, the main criteria was making sure it functions and making sure that it is consistent. So essentially, before the work, it kept stopping, and it also had inconsistent guiding. So 1 minute it would be fine, the next minute it would just go haywire. This is far better now. I approached several astronomy vendors in the UK, and only Darkframe were available at the time to service the mount. I've had 2 full nights of imaging from the mount, and it has performed faultlessly. It has not stopped. The guiding has been consistent, and so far I'm really quite pleased. It's working very well. Getting your astronomy mount serviced by a professional company pays off because they have experience of servicing hundreds of mounts, and I don't have that experience. Yes, I have serviced my mounts, I have tweaked them to improve them here and there, but I don't have the experience of literally hundreds and hundreds of mounts, and I don't have the facilities that they might have, and also the contacts to get spare parts. My mount was difficult because it had issues with the declination, which Darkframe were able to sort. So that's great. I now have a functioning mount which is imaging really well. There are a lot of really good mounts coming on the market at the moment, particularly a whole ream of harmonic drive mounts. What this means is that those that are keen to be early adopters will buy their nice new harmonic drive mount, and although they've been around a couple of years, you could argue they're not early adopters, but essentially we're going to have a load of traditional equatorial mounts coming on the second-hand market at a reasonable price. Some of those may be quite old and may need servicing, and that's where services like Darkframe and others come into play, because there is nothing at all wrong with equatorial mounts. Traditional equatorial mounts with counterweights and so on are brilliant, and they will guide beautifully, and there are bargains to be had at the moment. I've seen EQ5s for under £500 or bouncing around the £500 mark. That is a total steal. It's also really important to support smaller vendors because they offer services which perhaps you might not be able to get elsewhere. So it's really important that we consider the little guys as well as the big astronomy vendors. I managed about 4 hours of data on the Seda region and the star Seda, so I will show the image at the end. Small request, if you could like and subscribe, that makes such a difference to the videos because it shares them with a wider audience. Thanks so much for watching. Take care everyone.